Hi, I am Rick Bonney, Director Emeritus of the Public Engagement and Science Program at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. This presentation is part of a 10-module training program on developing and implementing citizen science projects for which scientists collaborate with members of the public to address real-world problems. The goal for this program is to introduce fundamental concepts of citizen science in U.S. federal land management agencies, which often use citizen science to manage resources and to engage the public in agency missions. This program was developed by several partners, including staff from the U.S. Forest Service, the National Park Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bureau of Land Management, and Schoodic Institute at Acadia National Park. This is the 8th module in our 10-module series. Module 7 examined projects and platforms that can be adapted or used to build new citizen science projects. This presentation discusses how to recruit, train, and engage participants in your project for achieving scientific and resource management objectives for parks, forests, grasslands, refuges, or similar lands and waters. It fits within our 10-part series here. 3 takeaways for this module are: first, to recruit, train, and engage participants, you need a clear understanding of their needs, motivations, and skill levels. Second, training is critical to ensure data quality and can be accomplished online, in person, or both. And third, continual engagement of your participants is essential to keep them actively involved. No matter how important your goals and how well designed your protocols, the success of your project depends on recruiting, training, and engaging sufficient participants. Consider the challenge. First, potential participants have to find out about the project. Next, they must decide whether to participate. Then they have to learn how. Finally, they must determine that volunteering to collect and submit data is worth their time and effort. And if the project is more than a one-time event, they need to continue to submit data over time. Before you begin the process of recruiting, training, and engaging participants, you need to have a clear understanding of who those participants are most likely to be, their needs, motivations, and skill levels. You also need to understand what they know about your agency, why they think you are implementing a citizen science project, and why you would like them to be involved. Most projects and their recruitment and support materials must be tailored to specific audiences, and hooks to attract and engage participants will vary from audience to audience. For contributory projects, those that begin with a well-defined question or issue, your participants may be a group of people who do not know each other but who share a common interest, concern, or hobby. In some cases, willing groups of volunteers may be fairly easy to identify. For example, when implementing studies of birds or butterflies, which many people watch as a hobby. The challenge in working with these individuals is creating a project that is fun, engaging, and meets their needs in multiple ways. For community-based projects, those that arise when a community chooses to address a local issue of concerns, participants may include a group of individuals who have many common interests and concerns and may know each other to some degree. The challenge for these projects is building and sustaining a trusting relationship with the community, which will include people with different reasons for participating and varied strengths to contribute. Some members of the community may have limited experience with science and may even be mistrustful of scientists. In practice, working with audiences in both types of projects has common themes. Even motivated volunteers with deep subject knowledge must be treated with sensitivity and respect, and must understand the reasons for and importance of the project in which they are engaging. And volunteers in community projects require them to be appealing and to meet their needs in various ways. Many surveys of existing projects have shown that individuals are primarily motivated by contributing to meaningful, useful science. However, many people participate in citizen science projects for social reasons, to meet new people, or to gain a sense of belonging, whereas others wish to increase their practical skills, for example, identification of flowers or insects. Still others volunteer because they want to share the skills they gain during their professional career. Understanding and honoring varied motivations is crucial to project success. Knowing and understanding your potential participants, then, is a critical first step in participant recruitment. Once you have developed an understanding of your desired audience, you need to identify and/or recruit project participants. If you already have a community of individuals ready to get started, you're a step ahead in the process. If you have only an idea of the types of people who would be suited to your project, you probably need to spend significant time recruiting. And even if you have a community of participants identified, you'll likely want to reach as many members as possible to engage the widest audience possible. The effort that you must put into recruitment will depend largely on how many volunteers you need and what special interests or skills you require your volunteers to have. Once you have determined that information, you can start recruitment, which is basically a form of marketing. You must appeal directly to the interests and motivations of potential participants and describe the benefits of participation, such as the satisfaction of being productive or the enjoyment of interacting with others during project activities. Be upfront about the time commitment and type of work that you are asking of volunteers. Also consider that typically you need to recruit more volunteers than you think you will need because of inevitable attrition. Volunteers can be recruited from partner communities such as natural history clubs, public service groups, church groups, master naturalists, retiree groups, after-school programs, libraries, science museums, recreation groups such as hikers and bikers, and community organizations. Consider the following recruitment techniques. Use social media, blogs, and videos. Most agencies have accounts on multiple platforms, as do many individual parks, forests, and refuges. Volunteer.gov is an online portal for federal agencies to list volunteer opportunities and to connect with interested volunteers. Many volunteers are interested in working at a place that they have personally visited. To let them know about citizen science opportunities, post flyers on message boards in popular locations on the unit, for example, visitor centers, campgrounds, and trailheads. Many visitors can use QR codes to access information. Engage diverse audiences through community organizations and large walk-in events, such as town events, career fairs, and farmers markets. Talk to teachers and principals to collaborate with classrooms focused on STEM topics or hands-on activities for students. Many parks, refuges, forests, and other lands have friends groups or other local organizations that serve as partners, and many of these groups include individuals who may be interested in participating in a citizen science project. Past citizen science projects have had success in recruiting volunteers through partner organizations with strong volunteer bases or through working with local teachers in schools. One example is Adventure Scientists, an organization that recruits highly skilled volunteers such as mountaineers to collect conservation data for partners such as the U.S. Forest Service. Making yourself visible and engaging with folks while you are out collecting data also can generate participants. Two projects that invested carefully in recruitment are Desert Avocaching and Bumblebee Watch. Desert Avocaching is essentially a game that was built on the eBird platform by the Sonoran joint venture. The goal of the project was to encourage birders to collect data about migrant birds from under-visited locations in the Mojave and Sonoran deserts. The data were intended to inform management and mitigation planning regarding alternative energy development in Southern and Eastern California. To recruit participants, the project organizers started by creating a bilingual web page hosted on the Sonoran joint venture website that provided background information on the game, its objectives and rules, a map of the desert avocaching locations, a list of potential prizes, and a real-time leaderboard to keep track of volunteers' scores. The Sonoran joint venture also published 2 articles, one hosted on its web page and promoted through its newsletter, and one on the eBird website. They also developed a social media toolkit to share with their partners, which offered guidelines for how to promote the game on social media outlets. The toolkit also included a series of suggested posts and graphics for partners to use on their websites and in social media accounts. The Sonoran joint venture made sure to tag its major partners, Point Blue, Great Basin Bird Observatory, and the Bureau of Land Management, as well as the prize sponsors to reach a larger audience. They also developed a series of hashtags for maintaining wording consistency in tracking project use. These recruitment tactics worked. During the winter and spring of 2018, 72 observers submitted 409 checklists representing more than 500 cumulative survey hours. Observers reported more than 16,000 birds of 102 species in migration at 53 avocaching sites, which were chosen for their proximity to planned or operating solar facilities. Observers recorded up to 8 migrating individuals per minute at these sites. These data are being used in ongoing studies of migration and mortality around solar installations. Bumblebee Watch is a collaborative effort of the Xerxes Society and multiple partners to track and conserve North America's bumblebees. Participants upload photos of bumblebees, identify the bees in the photos, and have their identifications verified by experts. The project has an intensive recruitment process. A public project webpage includes several tools to make it easy for people to learn about and join the project, including an FAQ page, an easy step-by-step how-to video guide showing how to join the project, a sign-up page, tips for how to photograph bees, and a contact email address for questions. Before participants can engage in your project, they need to understand its purpose, protocol or protocols, required skills, safety concerns, and how the data they collect will be used. Indeed, the quality of your data will depend on the volunteers' knowledge of the protocol and their commitment to following it correctly. Therefore, you need to ensure that volunteers understand the protocol well enough to contribute accurate and usable data. Typically, this requires the development of supporting materials and appropriate training to use those materials. A written instruction manual or protocol helps to ensure that all participants are clear about what data are to be collected and how to collect them. Clear and concise materials can increase volunteers' confidence in their data. Pointing out common data collection mistakes and letting your participants know what to watch for also can boost confidence in and willingness to submit the data that they collect. Don't forget to design for accessibility when appropriate. When designing materials, seek input from volunteers to ensure clarity and completeness. Use as many visual aids as possible. For example, plant identification guides and step-by-step visual instructions for using measuring instruments. Training videos also are helpful for volunteers to reference throughout the project. When possible, show participants who are engaged in the project explaining what they are doing. If you are implementing a project that you have adopted or adapted from another program, or if you are building a project using an established platform, then supporting materials might already be available to use as is or with some modification. Contact groups that specialize in the species, environmental topics, or training that you are investigating and ask their advice. They may be happy to share their resources. Actual project training can take many forms, from simply providing your instructions online to holding in-depth in-person workshops. The training that you provide will be determined by the knowledge and skill levels of your participants, the complexity of your project protocols, and whether in-person workshops are needed for field training, safety concerns, or development of content knowledge. If you are unable to provide extensive training, then while you are recruiting volunteers, be clear and explicit with them about the knowledge and skills they'll need to bring to the table to participate successfully. If your project is simple, or if volunteers work in groups and you have team leaders on site with volunteers already well versed in the protocol, then a set of instructions at the beginning of the field day may suffice. One very successful citizen science project is the Coastal Observation and Seabird Survey Team, or COAST, which was established to identify the carcasses of marine birds found on beaches along the coasts of Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. This University of Washington project partners with state, tribal, and federal agencies, environmental organizations, and community groups. COAST volunteers conduct surveys for bird carcasses that they measure, identify, photograph, and mark. COAST data are used to detect unusual events such as increased mortality due to low food availability, weather, harmful algal blooms, and oil spills. COAST data also can be used to identify long-term changes in the status of resident marine bird populations. COAST volunteers require substantial training. Nearly all COAST volunteers are trained at an in-person, hands-on event hosted at a local community center or event space. Coast staff travel to teach new participants how to survey their assigned beach, to document beached birds in a standardized way, and to use a custom beach bird field guide to measure and identify marine bird species. Undoubtedly, such training events remain the best and most effective way to train volunteers. There is no substitute for handling specimens to practice the process of seabird identification. However, during the height of COVID-19 restrictions, Coast staff developed a virtual training system that provides a great model for other projects that focus on environmental data collection. This training breaks the approximately 5 hours of in-person training into 2 levels. After learning the basics of survey methodology in Level 1, participants try their hand at surveys on their own, while relying on the Coast office team to identify the birds they encounter. After completing 2 surveys, participants are invited to attend a Level 2 training where they learn the techniques of measuring and identifying a bird. While the Level 2 training may take place in a virtual space, Coast participants are encouraged to attend in-person trainings at this stage or at their earliest opportunity to practice their identification skills. As another example of training, consider Alabama Water Watch. In the initial phase of this project, Water Watch conducted in-person multi-day workshops. Currently, Water Watch conducts hybrid trainings that combine online self-paced coursework and in-person field sessions to certify new monitors. In the online portion of the training, Alabama Water Watch provides an overview of the project and information related to the water environment, forests and watershed health, pollution, and water quality standards. Following completion of the online coursework, participants attend a field session during which they conduct monitoring at a national forest. Forest Service district staff give presentations that highlight the ecological history, flora, and fauna of the national forest during the field session. They also provide volunteers with additional safety guidelines and protocols for working in the forest, and they certify the volunteers as water chemistry and bacteriological monitors. Each training takes a total of around 10 hours and includes a visit to the local Forest Service office. Approximately 1 year after their initial certification, volunteer monitors must complete recertification requirements, including a short training session or online test, depending on the monitoring type. After the initial recertification, volunteers are required to recertify every 2 years. If you decide to hold in-person trainings for your project, consider the following pointers. The more connected that new volunteers feel at the beginning of the project, the higher your retention rate is likely to be. Introduce volunteers to each other. Then explain the project's purpose and goals, along with any data or trends documented so far. Get volunteers used to the environment. An on-site field orientation is the best choice, especially for new volunteers. It doesn't have to be at the exact site of your project, but should be a good representation. Provide additional training. Give volunteers the option of furthering their knowledge of the training material with online resources, webinars, books, and local presentations. Let volunteers learn from each other. Consider having new participants join seasoned volunteers for the first couple of dates or for the full season, rather than starting new volunteers on their own site right away. If a volunteer feels too intimidated as a beginner, they are more likely to drop out of a project. In addition, when experienced volunteers teach others, they learn even more about the project and hone their skills. You might consider requiring all experienced volunteers to announce their first monitoring dates and allow newer volunteers to join. This provides mentoring for new volunteers, as well as several options for dates and a diversity of sites at which to train. Use photography and video. Encourage volunteers to take photos of themselves and of artifacts that represent the program so they can be used in presentations or success story articles. Ask specifically for photographs showing faces and actions to get the most usable images. Make sure that participants know the expectations for video content, including using the proper protective equipment. Remember to provide a photo release form. Photographing minors requires special planning and might not be worth the needed effort. For community-based projects, trainers and liaisons who can speak the community's primary language and understand the culture are critical. Make sure that trainers who aren't from the community have an understanding and respect for the people with whom they'll be working. If you run in-person workshops, consider developing train-the-trainer workshops so that the people you train can in turn train others. You also might want to establish and maintain a network of local training hubs and expertise. Some projects build a network of regional mentors, coordinators, or champions. One program that relies on a train-the-trainer approach is the USA National Phenology Network. Because it is a national program with a small staff, the network has developed the Local Phenology Leader Program. Local leaders who wish to be certified complete an interactive 10-week course that requires participation in a combination of online assignments, group discussions, and the development of an individualized program plan for monitoring phenology with Nature's Notebook. These individuals can then train others in using the program. Any agency staff person who wants to set up a phenology monitoring program will be well served by participating in the Local Leader Program. Before diving into participant engagement, you'll need to consider two additional important factors: volunteer safety and data usage and ownership. Safety is paramount. Be sure to include safety measures while training volunteers. Ensure that volunteers understand relevant safety risks. Immediately after an accident or a near miss, notify the appropriate authorities in the manner specified by your agency. Data usage and ownership were discussed in Presentation 6 of this series. For completeness in this section on recruitment and training, we reiterate that the Crowdsourcing and Citizen Science Act of 2017 requires that, quote, as part of the consent process, the Federal Science Agency shall notify all participants, 1, of the expected uses of the data compiled through the project, 2, if the Federal Science Agency will retain ownership of such data, 3, if and how the data and results from the project would be made available for public or third-party use, and 4, if participants are authorized to publish such data. Make sure that you take these actions. Your work is not done when your participants are identified, trained, and beginning to collect data or otherwise participate in your project. You'll need to continually engage your volunteers to keep them actively involved. You'll want to thank them on a regular basis for their contributions and make sure they know that their contributions to the project make a difference. Volunteers are much more likely to stay involved if they know how and why their data are being used. And keeping participants motivated and informed is not only courteous but also advantageous. Well-supported participants will gain more from their participation, from increased skills to improved confidence to new social networks. Also, long-term volunteers collect higher quality data and can help to train new recruits. It takes a lot of effort to recruit participants and do all you can to retain them. The specific tools that you use for engagement will depend on your project and whether its participants are dispersed or working together on a community-based project. For dispersed, typically contributory projects, you need to rely primarily on email, newsletters, and social media. Personalized messages to participants are particularly appreciated, even if they are automated, but a regular online newsletter also will inform participants about project findings and the significance of their data. You also can create an online community of project participants using various social media. You'll probably need a staff person to keep up with that media, answering questions and ensuring that information provided by participants is accurate. Many projects have created strong online communities that are worth exploring for ideas. Consider the aforementioned Bumblebee Watch. A public web page shows recent sightings, links to explore data, a gallery of photos, and an interactive map of sightings with a tool to filter pictures. The web page also includes a top contributors table, links to social media accounts, blog posts, and a rotating photo display of bee sightings with credit given to the volunteer who took the photo. Other projects or platforms with strong online communities include iNaturalist, eBird, and Nature's Notebook, which can be mined for community building ideas. For community-based projects, participants can meet in person for workshops and social gatherings to share project findings and volunteer experiences. At such events, participants can present their own findings. You also can provide decision-making and governance opportunities for participants to take advantage of their expertise and to show respect for their contributions. For example, the Imperial County Community Air Monitoring Project is a community-based research and monitoring project designed to address residents' concern about the historically polluted air in their county. To create this project, Tracking California, which is a program of the Public Health Institute and the California Department of Public Health, partnered with Comité Cívico del Valle, a community-based organization, and the University of Washington to engage community members in efforts to collect real-time air quality data specific to their county. In addition to collecting data, community members participated in the design and direction of the project. Facilitated by Comité Cívico del Valle, a community steering committee was formed to invite community voices into the project's decisions. This committee of local residents used their knowledge of the community to guide project activities, such as identifying priority communities in which to install air monitors. This project has been successful in many ways. For example, these Imperial County communities were selected by the California Air Resources Board Community Air Protection Program to develop a community emissions reduction plan, which was approved by the board in 2019 and adopted by the Imperial County Air Pollution Control District. Whatever model your project follows, recognizing participants for their effort and hard work is critical. Despite your best engagement efforts, some participants will not participate very much, and others may leave the project completely. It's important to determine how many project participants stay or leave, why they do so, and what they are getting out of your project. We'll discuss these concerns in Presentation 10, which covers project evaluation. Here we offer a few points to help you target known issues early on. Some of the reasons that people drop out, particularly in community projects, relate to their degree of comfort with that community in terms of age, culture, and skill level. Therefore, welcoming new participants into a project is essential, and introducing them to other participants such that they feel welcome is critical. Such welcome messages can be done even in online projects. Another factor that influences continued engagement is the match between a project's activities and a participant's motivations and expectations. For example, many participants join a project to contribute useful information to science. If project data are not shared in an effective and timely manner, participants may become frustrated. Also, most participants expect some degree of acknowledgement for their work. If this is not forthcoming, participants may become disheartened. Therefore, assessing what determines project satisfaction and attending to this information is necessary to retain participants. Regardless of the depth of participation, always consider issues of reciprocity. This has both practical and ethical dimensions. Practically, participants who don't feel valued, listened to, or supported will not remain involved. From an ethical perspective, keep in mind the power dynamics that are inherent when a government agency leads monitoring efforts with implications for local economic security or environmental justice. Taking an asset-based approach to collaboration, focused on the strengths that different players bring to the table, can help to build trust in relationships. For community-based projects, individual check-ins with volunteers on an annual basis can be highly beneficial. For example, if a volunteer is not happy doing data collection, you might offer to have them switch to a different role. Become a mentor, help with developing training materials, take photographs, or write up stories of other volunteers that can be used in social media. Ultimately, be genuine in approaching public engagement as a relationship. Don't just check the box of expectations for public outreach. Earning the trust of the community and the respect and dedication of individual participants will set up the project to be more efficient and sustainable. Thank you for joining me today. The goal of this presentation has been to discuss how to recruit, train, and engage participants in your project. We hope that you'll take away 3 ideas. First, to recruit, train, and engage participants, you need a clear understanding of their needs, motivations, and skill levels. Second, training is critical to ensure data quality and can be accomplished online, in person, or both. And third, continual engagement of your participants is essential to keep them actively involved. Module 9 will discuss sharing your project with the wider world. The accompanying Citizen Science Toolkit includes resources to further guide your citizen science efforts. Have a great day.